Now we're broadcasting. See the big red stop broadcaster. All right, so hopefully it doesn't lose my thing here. So a couple of quick announcements, okay? We're going to finish chapter 1 today. Definitely start chapter 2, maybe finish 2. We'll see. We're going to have Monday, we'll go over whatever, I think chapter 3. Then Tuesday, we will have a review. We will also introduce the group project. And then the testing center, I could only schedule the computer test on the 2nd and 3rd. So we'll have the review on Tuesday. After the review, you can go to the testing center if you want. Tuesday will be the free day. You can also take it Wednesday. Wednesday will cost you $4. Wednesday, we will meet in our regular classroom for the test, for the paper test. I'll have you guys spread out really well since we got lots of room. Hopefully, by the way, I found out, I talked to one of the teacher who meets in our class after us, and he said, did you have any problems with the lights? And I said, no, we were in the library. And he said he walked in, lights came on, and then they turned off. And then he moved, and the lights came on, and then they turned off. So aren't you glad we were in the library yesterday? So anyway, what'd you say?
Find a dancer to dance.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know what happened there. So anyway, so let's go ahead and open up Excel. Is there a question? Question.
So there's a paper test?
A paper test and a computer test. All my tests will be 2-part tests. Paper tests will always be in our regular classroom. Computer tests will always be in the testing center. You can take as much time as you want. Spend 8 hours if you want. I wouldn't, but anyway, you could.
Do you know how many?
Get there early if you're going to spend 8 hours there, though.
How many questions?
If you show up an hour before the end of the test, you get an hour. Okay, just remember. How many questions on the computer?
Yes.
Usually 4, but they have ABC parts usually. So.
That might be 8. Okay.
Yeah, I mean they're all related. So, and then on the written test, it'll probably be 20 to 30 questions. Some multiple. It'll be like a long quiz basically. So some multiple choice, some show your work, that kind of stuff. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, as we are jumping from chapter to chapter, do you have a specific chapter that we are going to do?
So the plan is 1, 2, and 3, 8, 9, and 10. That'll be this first test. Okay. So you can kind of keep that in mind. All right. So have I started sharing yet? I don't think I have. Hopefully, we're going to share our computer. All right. So now, open up Excel. Okay. So we talked. I didn't save my. We're in a different room, so it doesn't matter. But we talked yesterday. We were starting to talk about histograms. Who remembers yesterday what the difference between a histogram and a bar graph was? There were 4 things I mentioned. Who remembers? Bars must touch. Categories should not overlap. Must be equally sized. Say that again. Numerical categories. Numerical categories. Okay, very good. All right, so I'm trying to decide. Our class is so small. Sometimes I make you guys, check your heartbeat or something, and we can collect data that way. But here's what we're going to do. We're just going to do. I showed you how to do the random number generator, right? It didn't work? Okay, well, let's do it again. So these are going to be random numbers. What'd you say?
Are we? Hold on.
I'm going to add a 5th one to here. Okay. Now, I'm going to put a star here. For this class, use 5 to 7 categories.
Under Histogram?
Yeah. Okay, now, that's not a rule. That's a rule for my class. I'm not going to give you 100,000 points of data. If you had 100,000 points of data, you'd use a lot more than 5 to 7 categories, okay? But we're going to use pretty small data sets. And so as a general rule, I would like you guys break it up into 5 to 7 categories, okay? Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so random numbers. So here's how we do random numbers. I showed you yesterday, but we'll do it again. So we're going to use the command ran between. If I remember Sandra yesterday, I think I'm learning people's names. You guys are in trouble now.
So equals ran between.
Ran between, and then wasn't it 5 and 32 you picked yesterday? We'll use that same thing again.
5-32 or 5 comma.
5 comma 32. Okay? And we're going to copy that down about there. Okay? Now, do you guys remember how to keep those numbers from changing? Because every time I type, they change. Remember how to fix that? Say it again.
You started and then you didn't tell us.
I think I told you. Oh, is that when the computer cut out yesterday? Okay. All right. So, yeah, that's probably when the computer cut out yesterday. All right. So, highlight your data.
Put a 30 at the top. It didn't do a whole.
Yeah, just drag it down.
Oh.
Drag the corner down.
Nope.
And that does a copy paste all in one step. Now, you don't have to learn these shortcuts, but if you don't learn these shortcuts, you're going to spend 8 hours taking the test.
Ran between and then 5 comma 32.
Right.
Do you have to put a space?
And go to the corner right
5
here.
comma.
Where it shows the flag.
Corner. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
no, trust me, I'm the same way. I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna go to that.
Now,
Yeah.
click and drag.
Okay.
Perfect.
I-
See, just like that. All right, any other questions?
I'm not at all.
Can that be our whole
That's
first
great. That
exam,
even was
please?
like Excel shortcut for
Okay,
staff.
so go to the next
There's a
step.
whole book on
Click and
it.
drag.
Oh,
Yeah, it's Excel for Dummies.
See on the corner.
And she's
I'm gonna have to start reading that
Excel
book.
for Dummies.
Is there a stat
It
section?
doesn't matter.
I don't know.
Where is that, like, YouTube?
Sorry.
It's a book. And she's like offering to lend it to me. I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna read the whole book on this, but I appreciate the offer. The offer.
All right, we good? Yeah, just, I don't know, however many have they.
Excel, easy Excel tutorial.
Yours will be different.
Yeah, so if
That's
it's
fine.
the same, there's the issue.
Okay? They're random numbers, so yours should be different, right? If they were the same, they wouldn't be random. We'd all have the same numbers. Okay? All right. Now, so here's what we're going to do. Highlight all your data, and you're going to say copy. And then you'll say, if you click on the one with the 1, 2, 3, that's values, okay? So the nice thing about this is,
1, 2, 3.
right click, click on the clipboard with the 1, 2, 3, right there.
Values only, there's no.
Values, yeah. There's no clipboard? Did you right click? Oh, you're using online.
Oh, I'm not doing.
Oh, that's okay. Don't they
No,
have,
that's okay. I wish.
they do have a different one. That would have worked fine. But just type Excel down here. There you go. Now you're using the same version. Yeah, the online version is slightly different.
I feel like I have the right
We
thing,
did.
but I don't know if I have the right thing.
Okay.
Yeah, here.
Looks like you're okay, but
Yeah.
trying to.
You copy it first,
Any special, and you can say values.
and then you right click again. Highlight it and go to the 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. You're gonna have a hard time using that Mac.
Right here.
Yeah, this, not sure. Yeah. See, it's a good thing I didn't rush through this yesterday, huh?
Here.
No, get on the corner, on the
As
corner.
long as this entire stats class is not learning how to use Excel, I'll be happy.
Okay, you see how you do it? See it's a white cross now?
Yeah.
Not the black cross.
And then you can
And
drag
then
it
click and
down.
drag. Yeah.
Why it's drag the same number down?
That's because you don't have a formula.
Is it? Is it?
So paste options.
That's not random. So equals rand
I say no.
between
Why don't my paste options come up? Paste
5. Now drag that 19 down.
Put it
Okay.
over here.
Right there, perfect. Oh, okay. I normally paste it on top of it, but that's
Oh,
okay. Okay, so, yeah. Right click, say copy.
For the first part of your class is spending 20 minutes on how to do something on Excel.
That'll be annoying.
Okay, you good? Are you glad the computer crapped out yesterday? Because it's taking a long time.
Okay, Professor, look, I have the paste options on the actual, not online version, but there's not the single.
Did you copy it first?
Yeah.
No, you didn't. Because, okay, so let me know you
Copy.
copy. Now you see the Las Vegas light show thing around? That means you copied it. Now, there it is. Okay?
Okay. Got it. Worksheet.
All right, are we good? We caught up finally?
Now, I have a question. What are those letters? D, S, E.
Those are just junk. Okay, now, when I type, see the numbers don't change anymore?
Oh.
That's why I put that there. It's just junk. Okay? All right, so we're all good now? Can you all use a random number generator? Okay? All right, so you know how to use the table, and you can use Excel if I ask you either method, right? You can find a bunch of random numbers for me?
Yeah.
Okay, you got to know that by Wednesday, or Tuesday maybe. Okay? All right, Wednesday for sure, but Tuesday maybe, if you want to take the test Tuesday. All right, so the idea here is we're going to make a special bar graph with numerical categories, okay? Now, you don't have to sort your data, but a lot of times it's helpful to sort it, okay? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Data.
How'd you get rid of the Las Vegas light show?
You pasted it. Did you already paste it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you did it correctly, it should now format. It should now sort, okay?
Should I do it multiple times or what?
Are you sure you did it right?
And I have.
Are we talking about let's start with that?
Here, let's see.
Like,
Okay, you're good.
Yeah.
Okay, I
Okay,
just.
just sort it.
I did the same thing.
Well, what do we do?
And I have the.
Yeah. You're good, just sort it.
That's
Okay, sort your data. All right, so now we know that we've got the numbers 5 to 32 in here. Actually, in my case, I've only got 5 to 29. So I could go 5 to 9, 10 to 14, 15 to 19, 20 to 24, 25 to 29. That would give me 5 categories, okay? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create some groups here, okay? Now, here's one of the annoying things about Excel, okay? I want to do 5-9 and watch what happens when I press enter. May 9th. I didn't want it to do May 9th, right? How do you fix that? Apostrophe, right? 5-9, okay? Now, if I do 10 to 14, that changes it into October 14th. I didn't want that. How do I fix that? Apostrophe 10 to 14. 15 to 19, there is no 15th month, so it won't do it anymore. 20 to 24, there's no 24th month, so we're good. 25 to 29, okay? Now, it might be tempting, let me do this wrong. In fact, I will clearly label this wrong.
So how are you defining your groups here? Why did you change this number of groups?
I want them all to be equally sized, okay? Now let me show you a wrong way to do this. You might go 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, 20 to 25, 25 to 30. Why would that be wrong? Those are all equally sized, right? Okay. What'd you say?
That's what's really funny.
Oh, 25 to 29, thank you. Yeah, that would be an unequally sized group, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so why is the second group wrong? So where am I going to put 10? Does that go in this group or does that go in that group?
Oh.
You see that? Where does 10 go?
Oh.
Okay, because they overlap, right? So the rule is the categories should not overlap. And so that's why I went 5 to 9, 10 to 14. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that's why that is wrong. Okay, they don't overlap. Now, a lot of you are bad counters. It's okay, I'm a bad counter too. Okay? So Excel is a very good counter though. Okay, so here's what I would recommend. So we're going to count up all the 5 to 9s. Now you can probably count to 2, right? But if you look right here, down here in the corner, that says 2. It also gives you the sum and it gives you the average. Okay? So if you look right here, it says 2 right there. So these are number. Okay, so I've got 2 5 to 9s. 10 to 14s, I've got 4. 15 to 19s, I've got 3. 20 to 24s, I've got 3. And 25 to 29s, 25 to 29, I have 6. Okay, does that make sense? Now you will have different numbers because you've got different random numbers, but does that make sense? Okay. All right, so categories don't overlap. They're equally sized. They're numerical categories. We're using 5. The bars must touch. Okay, so let's pick on Cade, because I remember your name. How do you make a bar graph? Do you remember from yesterday?
Insert, we'll highlight your data.
Highlight your data first.
Insert,
Insert
and go over to the bar graph.
bar graph right here. 2D. Okay. Now, okay, are the bars touching? No, because right now it's a bar graph. It's not a histogram. We're going to turn it into a histogram, just like this. Okay. And you're going to click on click. You're going to click on quick layout. Say that fast 10 times. Right now, the bars touch. Okay. And so this is my groups. This is the number of people, let's say, I don't know, this is junk data, so it can be whatever it is, okay? And we'll say this is our math 1040 class, random numbers, okay? All right, now, I think we're gonna have a little bit of a discussion here on the next question I'm going to ask you is to describe the data. Maybe if I do this, we're going to see how good of a cameraman I am here. Let's go to the board. We're going to stop sharing. Here we go. Oh, that's not too bad. All right. So we're going to talk about labeling a histogram. Histogram. Okay. Now there are different types of histograms. Okay. You will see something that looks like this, right? What is that? Kind of looks like a bell curve.
Like standard deviations.
It does not look like standard deviation. But we could say this is a bell curve, or you could also say it's symmetric. Okay? To be honest, we hope that our data looks like that. Okay? Our data does not look like that. You can kind of draw a bell curve on here. And I'm going to use, instead of using boxes, I'm just going to use curvy lines here. Ours looks something like this, right? Isn't that what ours looks like? At least mine. Maybe yours doesn't, but mine does look like that, okay? This would be what we would call a bimodal graph. Okay, you've got 2 humps. Okay, we haven't talked about what the mode is. I think we should talk about what the mode is before, but this book doesn't do that. So anyway, or you could also see something that looked like this, okay? That would be trimodal. Or quad modal, as the case may be. Okay? We also have a graph that may look like this. Okay? Now this is one that students always get confused. And so here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you, draw a line at the peak. Okay? Which side is bigger, the left side or the right side? The left side. In this case, we would say this is left skewed. Okay? If it looked like this, It would be right skewed. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay? And so these are the types of histograms that you will likely see. You also may see something that looks like this, roughly. And in fact, my graph, if we took off that last category, would look roughly like this. Correct? This would be what we would call a uniform distribution. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so when you make your histogram, I'm going to ask you, what does it look like? Is it a symmetric bell curve? Is it bimodal, trimodal, left skewed, right skewed, or a uniform distribution? Now, yesterday we taught you some line graphs, didn't we? Okay. So if your data, if you've got time and then you've got, you know, let's say dollars here, that's what we did yesterday, and you see something that looks like this, what would you say about that graph? How would you describe that graph? Yeah, a lot of you want to call that skewed, and I'm going to say no, because that's not a histogram.
So only histograms.
Only histograms get to be skewed. Okay, line graphs, you don't say they're skewed, you would probably say this has an upward trend in price, or a downward trend.
Only histograms
Okay,
can have.
or maybe if you're talking about the line graph, okay, you know, you've got a peak at whatever this is December. Peak in December. Okay, and it goes up to December and then down from December. Okay, so don't tell me your line graph is skewed. It's not skewed. It's an upward trend. It's a downward trend. Skew only refers to histograms. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. All right, I think we got that all on video. That's amazing. Lights are kind of bad though. I wonder if this would help. Does that help with the video? A little bit.
Could you put the video, flip it so you can
Oh, there's
see?
still a big reflection on the board. So this video is going to be automatically added to that playlist. Oh, by the way, I should just mention here, if you really want to know when all of my videos are
Subscribe.
Hit that like button.
let's
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Well, I'm trying to find, well, here, tell you what, I will just click on the YouTube link, okay? So if you click on this bell, every time I post a video, you'll get immediate access. You'll be a subscriber. So subscribe, okay? I don't make any money off of YouTube. You can subscribe if you want to know when it's posted. And if after class, if you're not subscribed, you can say, hey, what happened to that video? And I'll say, oh, it didn't work. Or I'll be like, oh, I forgot. Okay? So anyway, that's how you can know that the videos are posted immediately. Oh, except for I wasn't sharing that screen, so nobody saw it. Let me try that again. Whoops. Let's share. That's the other problem, is sometimes I forget to share. Okay, click on the bell. That will be, and so like if you're watching, I wonder if we can play yesterday's video. Oh yeah, there we go. So you can subscribe. I don't think I can subscribe because I'm already there, but somewhere on there it says subscribe, and you can click on the bell. Okay? Wow, it's even playing. I don't know. We'll see if we can hear that. Anyway, we don't want to hear yesterday. All right. So, any questions on histograms? Yes.
What's the little box say?
What'd you say?
One on the right, Stu.
The one on the right.
Uniform distribution?
Oh, below? Yeah, that's the uniform distribution. Okay? All right. Now, I know that yesterday, do you want me to leave the lights off, or is that okay? It looks a little better on video. What'd you say? I don't think there's any way. Yeah, there's no way. Yeah. All right. So now, I know yet Jordan said that he saw some stuff about a stem and leaf plot. He didn't understand that, but the stem, you can think of a stem and leaf plot. Stem, this isn't writing very dark. Yes, you get a new pen. Stem and leaf plot. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at the data that we just had here. Okay, these don't have to be in order, by the way, especially if I give it to you on a test. But since mine's in order, I'll go ahead and do it. Okay, a stem and leaf plot you can think of as a text histogram. Okay, now if I were to do a stem and leaf plot with the same data that I just used here, okay, you can see it, my data goes from 5 to 30 roughly, correct? Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have 0, 1, 2, and 3. Actually, I don't think I have any 30s, but I'll leave it there just in case. Okay? And so you can think of this as the stem, and these are the leaves. Okay? So this was used back before they used computers. Honestly, I don't know why we keep telling you about this, because why not use a computer, right? But we'll go through here. I've got a 5. So 0, 5. And I've got another 5. Okay? And then I've got a 10. And then I've got a 12. And a 14, and a 14, and a 15, and a 16, and an 18, and a 19, okay? And then I've got a 22, and I got another 22, and a 24, and a 25, a 27, and a 27, a 28, and a 29. Okay? So, you can think of that as a text histogram. Now, in this case, I've only got 3 categories, right? It's not an ideal situation, but that's kind of a quick and easy way to do a text histogram. If you were to draw a curve or something like this,
How did you decide which numbers to put on which line?
these are the single digits, these are the 10s, these are
Oh,
the 20s.
okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's easiest just to go by 10s in this case, okay? Now this isn't as good because it's only got 3 categories rather than 5, but it's a nice easy thing to do. My data was sorted. I don't care if you sort your data, but your stem and leaf plot would look like that. Yes, Kate?
And those numbers are from the random numbers you got?
These are from the random numbers I just used on my Excel spreadsheet, yes. It's called a stem and leaf plot.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, stem and leaf plot, but you can think of it as a text histogram. So if you were to turn your head sideways like this, would that be right or left skewed?
Right.
Left skewed. Because here's your peak, and this is a little bit more on the left. Okay? Does that make sense? So that's a stem and leaf plot. So could you do that on a computer? If you got a computer, just make a graph. Could. It's just kind of dumb. It's better. It's more of a paper and pencil thing. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. I think that's the end of chapter 1. How about that? Okay. Now, let's go on to, I wonder, is that, yeah, that's better. I think I'm going to go to black, though. I think it'll look better. All right, so let's move on to chapter 2, okay? So I will have a homework quiz for chapter 1. Maybe chapter 2, we'll find out if we finish this one, okay? So let's move on to chapter 2. I keep trying to draw my black. I think the black will look the best on the video. All right, chapter 2. Okay, we're going to talk about the mean, the median, and the mode. We should have talked about the mode sooner, okay? So the mean is what you commonly think of as the quote-unquote average, okay? This is what you've learned ever since elementary school. They say find the average, and basically what you do is you add them up, and then you divide by the number of items. Okay? You're all used to that. You're just probably not used to calling it a mean, but it's actually called the mean. Okay? We've also got the median, which is the middle value. And the formula for that is going to be n plus 1 divided by 2. I will explain that in just a moment. Okay? Then we have the mode. The mode is the most common value. Okay? So, all three of these terms you could think of as the quote-unquote average, which is why I don't like to use the word average anymore. I want you to say, is it the mean, is it the median, is it the mode? Okay? And we're going to ask you guys, I'm going to come up with some data, and we'll talk about which is the best quote-unquote average. Okay? So, let's go back to Excel. Okay, I'm going to open up a new sheet here. And, all right, so let's pretend that the University of North Carolina wanted to know and I'm going to put quote-unquote average salary of geography majors. Okay? And so the first geography major made $20,000 a year. The second one also made $20,000 a year. The third one made $25,000 a year. The fourth one made $35,000 a year. And then the last one is a famous person. You may have heard of him.
Oh, not MJ.
He made $3 million a year. And who is that, Jordan?
Person I'm named after,
The
Michael
person-
Jordan.
You're named after Michael Jordan?
Yeah, my middle name is Sky, based off of Air Jordan.
You're kidding me.
Oh, my other brother's named after Karl Malone. My other brother's named after John Stockton.
Oh, man, I hate Michael Jordan. I was there for Game 6, I want you to know, and that just...
Oh, that's the reason I hate Michael Jordan.
That's exactly the reason I hate Michael Jordan. He's horrible.
Because he's
Did you watch Game 6? Are some of you even old enough to remember Game 6?
I'm old enough to remember Game 6.
1998. Holy cow, that was 20 years ago. 21 years ago. No, yeah.
Go sports.
It's amazing that we have college students that would not even remember the shot. That's horrible. All right. Well, I'm glad y'all are old like me. That's good. By the way, I still have a Game 7 press pass, never been used.
What?
So anyway, I should sell it, right? Never been used, Game 7, 1998 playoffs.
Jewish.
I was there. All right, so now, in the past, you all know how to find the mean, right? Okay, how do you find the mean?
Add them all up.
Sum divided by number.
So I could say equals the sum, and then I can highlight all of this data. Oh, I should tell you how I'm doing that, okay?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
If you want to use only your keyboard, just use the up arrow and put it on the $3 million. And then if you hold the shift key down, you can use the arrow and it will scroll up there for you. And then you can close your parenthesis. And then we're going to divide that by 5/5, okay? So the mean salary is $620,000 per year. Would you say that that is a good representation of what a geography major can expect to make per year? Probably not, right? But let me ask you this. If I told you that geography majors make $620,000 a year, how many of you would go change your major to geography? I would make that kind of money. My wife actually majored in geography, and she also majored in art. And I tell her that she can draw maps. True story.
I'm doing the shift thing, it's not working.
You're doing the shift thing and it's not working? It's probably because it's a map.
But you gotta get steps.
I don't freaking know.
It probably is. Now, the easier here, let me show you an easier way to do this. Okay. What you can do, if you hit this auto, this weird like an E thing,
I should be
that
right
will
word
for you, and then you can do the third, /5. Okay?
Right here.
Now, I just showed him a thing, because I don't know how to use Macs.
Here we go.
Put a parenthesis there, or double click on the word sum.
Right here?
Yeah, double click it. Okay? And now you use your mouse to highlight that stuff. There you go, you're good, okay.
Okay. Get back.
I'm gonna figure this out one of these days.
Like that. See that?
Okay.
Okay?
I feel stupid.
You need equals sum. Parenthesis, or double click it, you do that. Now use your mouse, which is highlighted. Okay? Close your parenthesis. Okay, you good? Here, by the way, I'll show you this. You can hit that.
What the fuck?
And then you can edit it /5. Okay? We good?
No, I got the wrong.
And by the way, I showed a few people this. Oh, don't watch Michael Jordan.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Right when he's
We
put
don't
stuff
need to watch
like
back memories of
below,
1998.
man,
That was
right
horrible. Now, by the way, for some of you, I said it might be easier to do this. So let me show you this. There's this button here that looks like an E. That's actually the Greek letter sigma. You can click that, and it will say, oh, do you want the sum? And then you can say yes. Sometimes it guesses wrong, though. And then you can hit /5. Okay? So that will work as well. Okay? Now, let's talk about the median now. Okay? The median. Okay? Median is the middle value. Now, in this case, how many data points do I have? I've got 5. So your n is 5. N plus 1 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Okay, so in order to do the median, you have to sort your data. 1, 2, 3, that is $25,000. That's your median, okay? Median is the middle value. Half of the people make less than 25,000. Half of them make more than 25,000. So in relation to the so-called mean or the average, which one gives you a better idea of what a real geography major can make? Is it the mean or is it the median in this case? Yeah, so the mean, so one of the nice things about the median, I should write this on the board, is it is less influenced by outliers. Clearly, we haven't talked about outliers, but clearly Michael Jordan is an outlier, right? He's making way more than the rest. We'll talk about how to find outliers here in just a minute.
So I have a question. That formula, n plus 1 divided by 2, that indicates the position on your data set if they're in order that you should count to get what the median.
That's correct. Yeah, you need to sort your data, and then you go to in this case, the third data point, and whatever that value is the median. Okay? Now let's talk about the mode. What is the most common value in this case?
20,000.
It is 20,000, right? So more students make 20,000 than any other value. So you could think of that as a good estimator of the of the average, right? The quote unquote average. That's why I'm going to refer to the word average as the A word, and I'm going to pretend it's a swear word. We can't say it in this class anymore, okay? So nobody use that word or we'll have to wash out your mouth with soap, okay? And I know I've been swearing all class, but I'm going to stop now. Okay? Does that make sense? Now, the question is, what happens? So this was really good. But I'm going to add a sixth graduate in here, and I'm going to put it right here. And this sixth graduate is also going to make $35,000. Okay? Now, because I used that formula on my mean is no longer correct. Okay?
Did it just change by some?
It did change, but I'm dividing by 5 instead of by 6, right? I should divide by 6. So there's two ways I can do this. I can change that 5 to a 6, and now the mean is a mere $500,000, $522,500. Okay, I would still change my major if I could make $500,000 a year. Okay, wouldn't it be bad to be like a bench player and be just making $500,000 a year? Wouldn't
I'd be okay with it.
I'd be okay with it too. Okay. All right, the median now, we got a problem. Okay. Because the median is the middle value, but now I've got an even number. So I've got 6 data points, right? 6 plus 1 is 7. 7 divided by 2 is
2.5.
3.5. And I don't know about you, but I have a hard time counting to 3.5. Okay? So if you have an even number, we're going to still use the same formula, but this time, instead of taking this, we're going to take 3.5. So that we're going to take the third and the fourth value. Okay, and we're going to find the mean. And by the way, can I curse Bill Gates for the moment? There is a command for the mean. What do you think the word, if you were going to come up with a word for the mean, what would you use? Probably the A word, right? That's what Bill Gates does, curse him. Okay, he's going to make me swear here. Equals average. But we're going to do the mean of those two values there.
So you can just put average in?
Average for the mean, yes. So the median is, in this case, 30,000. Now what that means is nobody actually makes $30,000 a year, right? But half of the graduates make less than 30,000. Half of them make more than 30,000. Does that make sense? And the mode. Now we've got a problem with the mode as well. What is the mode now? We have 2 modes. Okay, we've got 20,000 and we've got 35,000. Whoops. $35,000. Okay. Now let me do one more thing here. I'm going to erase this
How did you
one,
get that mode?
and I'm going to erase this one. What is my mode now? I have no mode. Okay? So you can have no mode, you can have one mode, you can have more than one mode. Okay? And so, yeah, you could have in our case before here, let me go back here. We've got 2 modes in this case. 20,000 is one mode, 35,000. Now, do you understand bimodal when we talk about the histogram? We've got 2 modes going on. Now, typically, when we talk about a bimodal distribution, that usually means we have 2 different populations that we have combined. So, for example, let me go back to my board here for a second. Stop sharing. Okay. If I may explain here back, you remember we had the bimodal distribution, like that, right? 2 humps, okay? Now a good example of something like this, we know that generally men are taller than women, right? Or they weigh more, or whatever you want to do, okay? So this might be the mode of the men, this might be the mode of the women, okay? And so if you see something like this, that generally means you've mixed 2 different populations, okay? And so you may want to separate out the men from the women in this case or something. Does that make sense? Okay? And so that's why we call that bimodal, okay? So you can have one mode, you can have no mode, you can have one mode, or you can have more than one modes. You could have 3 or 4 modes, okay? All right, so any questions on that? Okay, now just for fun, I want to collect some real data here for a minute. So here's what I'd like you to do. I want you to find your pulse. We're going to take about 30 seconds. And so hurry to find it. I will tell you when to start counting. And we're going to count for about 30 seconds your heart rate. Okay, and I'm going to collect your data here in just a minute.
Start on 0 or 1?
What'd you say?
Start on 0 or 1?
I'll tell you when to start counting, okay? You mark, it's set, go. We'll just go 15 seconds. I think we will. Side reflection, I can't see. Stop. Okay? So this is going to be my quiz for you all. We're going to find the mean, the mode, the median, and a bunch of other stuff. All right, here we go. All right. So, Mr. Michael Jordan, what's your pulse rate?
76.
76. Now I'm going to remember you. Sandra, 76 in 15 seconds?
Well, I just multiplied it.
Okay, we'll leave it there because that's going to be an outlier. We're going to use that as an outlier. What was your pulse rate? 19? 18?
15.
15?
19.
Like it's kind of like say mine was a 9.
20.
20?
19.
19?
That's close. 12.
12?
12.
12? 12. All right.
People the back.
So we've got 10 pieces of data here. Okay, what happened to your friend? He left.
I don't know.
Not coming back?
Up and
That's too bad. All right, 10 pieces of data. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find the mean, the median, and the mode. Okay, I want you to do this by hand as well as with the computer. Okay, so how would I do this by hand? By hand and computer. I want you to know both methods, okay? Let's pick on Aaron. How do you do this by hand?
For the mean,
For the mean.
you put equals,
Equals,
sum,
highlight all your data, divided by, you get 10, okay? Now, Bettina, how would you find the median by hand?
Okay, so n plus 1 divided by 2.
Correct.
So there's 10 data points plus 1 is 11 divided by 2.
Okay,
It's 5.5.
5.5. So I just count to 5.5.
So I'd take 15
1,
and
2,
16 together
3, 4,
and,
5.5. So what
oh,
would
I
you,
ordered mine.
oh, you got to order them first. You didn't say that.
Oh, I
Oh.
ordered them.
Okay,
Yes.
let's sort them.
I'm sorry,
Okay,
I sorted them.
sort them in order first. Okay,
So they're already in order for, oh, you did a biggest one. Okay, so I take numbers, what did I say, 5 and 6?
5
then
and
you get
6.
the mean of that, so 2 divided by, or add them up and divide by 2.
okay, so that would be 17.5, right?
Yeah.
And the mode in this case would be what, Alex? Is it 12? We got 3 12s? Yep, it is. How about that? Okay, which one of those do you think is the best representation of a pulse rate in 15 seconds?
Well,
12?
this is the outlier.
I'd probably go with the 17.5, the median,
Okay.
personally. All right, now, how would we do this with the computer? What command would I use if I were using the computer? Remember, you have to curse Bill Gates every time you use it, though.
Average.
Equals average, okay? And if you do
So
that,
the
that's
mean is-
easy.
To do mean, you go equal average?
Yeah, you just swore, wash it out your mouth. Okay? Or you at least have to say curse Bill Gates after you say it, okay?
First Bill Gates.
All right, if you were going to come up with a command for the median, what would you call it?
Middle?
How about something even more obvious than that? Come on, James, you can come up with something more obvious than that.
Center?
Median, oh, there we go. And you can bless Bill Gates for that. So the nice thing about the median command is you don't even need to sort your data. It'll just figure it out for you. Oh, median is 16 and a half. Did I do something wrong? Oh yeah, it should be 16.5. Bad math in my head. Okay, the mode. There is a command for the mode, but it's too hard to use. I think it's just easier to find by hand. Because the problem is, if you have more than one mode, which we don't, I think mode would work in this case, but I don't know how it works. Oh, it did work there, but the problem is if you have more than one mode, it might not work. So I wouldn't use it, but because even if you use mode multi,
So mode, you just have to eyeball it?
yeah, I think that's the easiest thing. It still came up with 12, but the problem is, what if I put a 19 in here? See, it still says 12. So I don't like that command.
Because there's actually two modes.
Because there's two modes in this case, and I don't know how to get it to do that. So I would say avoid the mode command. Okay? Yes,
I
Aaron.
literally just forgot how to get, like, I don't know. Like,
We just said the word equals median.
oh, okay. All right. Now it's about like by hand.
Okay? Now, I also want to talk about something called the 5-number summary.
Hold on, he had this question.
Oh, you got it. I thought I answered it. Did I not answer your question?
By hand. By hand.
By hand, it's n plus 1 divided by 2.
Oh, you just do it up. Okay.
Yeah. Okay? All right, so now let's talk about the 5-number summary. 5-number summary. Okay, the 5-number summary consists of 5 numbers: the minimum, the maximum, the median, not the mean, but the median, okay, and what we're going to call Q1 and Q3. Q1 stands for quartile 1, and Q3 stands for quartile 3, okay? You can also think of this as the 25th percentile, and you can think of this as the 75th percentile, okay? So, here's what I'm going to say. Let's go back to my thing here, okay? I want you to find out how to do this by hand as well as with the computer. You're going to get a different answer if you do it by hand than if you do it with the computer, okay? So, the 5-number summary by hand and with the computer, okay? So when it's sorted, it's pretty easy, right? It's the minimum, Q1, the median, Q3, and the maximum, okay? So the minimum by hand is 12, the maximum is 76, the Q1 in this case. So one way to think of the quartile 1 is the median of the top half. Now the question is, do I include the median or not? And there is no standard answer to this, okay? If you talk to different statistic teachers, you're going to get different answers. You're in my class, so you have to get my answer, okay? So the answer is, do whatever it takes to make the median, the number odd, okay? We like odd numbers, because odd numbers give us the whole number, okay? So in this case, the median, well, we've already got the median here, so this is 16 and a half. Oops, 16.5. Okay? Now the question is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm kind of including my median in there, right? Because 5 is an odd number. 5 plus 1 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. I go 1, 2, 3. That becomes my quartile 1. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Now I've got 5 on the bottom. 1, 2, 3. That becomes quartile 3. My third quartile is 19. Okay, does that make sense? All right, now if I were to use the computer, and if you were Bill Gates and you wanted to come up with a command for the quartiles, what would you call it? What? Q1, that would be close.
The median for the first half.
If you wanted to come up with a command for the quartiles, what would you call it? Quartile. What a great idea. Okay. Now the question is,
Which one?
which one? Do you want to include the median? Do you want to exclude the median? We've got
Oh, that's
include and
okay.
exclude here, and we've got this one that doesn't specify. That's the one I want you to use. Okay. I want you to use the bottom one here. Okay. Now it asks you for an array. Another word for array means your data. Okay. So here's what I would recommend you do. Use your mouse and highlight your data over here. Okay. Do you want me to show you the wrong way and then the right way to do this?
I don't even want you to show us the wrong way.
Yeah, you'll do it the wrong way. That's why I want to show it to
If
you.
I see the wrong way.
Okay.
I'm thinking about the wrong
I'm
way.
going to do it the wrong way first. Okay. I'm going to click comma, and then it says, do you want the minimum, the first, second, third, or the maximum value here? And so in this case, I want the minimum value. Okay.
You can fill out the parentheses.
I'm going to close my parenthesis, and it's going to give me 12, which is actually the right value. And so a lot of you are going to think, oh, I'm scot-free, I got the right value. But here's the problem. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag this down. Okay, now, do you see, all of these should say the minimum value. Do you see that 12, 12, but then it goes to 13 and to 15. And the reason why is because when you copy, so the first formula looks okay. The second formula, when you click on it, do you see that it's highlighting, it's skipping the first one and now it's adding this here? You see that? So it's changing. Now sometimes you're going to want that behavior and sometimes you're not. If you go down to the maximum down here, and if you double click here, do you see what it's done? It skipped the first 4. It's now including this calculation here. I don't want that in there. You see that? Okay, so there is a way to do this properly. Now I'm going to show you the right way. Okay, so if you go back into here, okay, if you press right here, the F4 key, it's going to put $ in here. Okay, do you see that? And then I'm going to go over to the A10 and I'm going to press F4 key again. If you have a Macintosh, Aaron, I do know that if you hit Command T, it will do the same thing. Okay? But for the rest of you, and for the test, you're going to want to press the F4 key. And some of you may not have, if you have a laptop, you may not have an F4 key. If you have a Mac, you press Command T. If sometimes you'll have it, but you need to press the function key, Fn, and then press F4, and it will work. Okay? Now, the nice thing is, when I copy this down now, all of the numbers are the same, and that's what I'm hoping for. Okay? Now, when I go to the second one here, I want to change that 0 to a 1. And now I want to change that 0 to a 2, and to a 3, and to a 4. Okay? Now, you'll see we've got these side by side. The maximums are exactly the same. The medians are exactly the same. And the minimums are exactly the same. What's not the same? Q1 and Q3 are going to be different. Okay? And that's okay. They're using a different method than we are. Okay? So here's the rule on the upcoming test. If I give you a paper test, I expect you to do it with this method. If I give you a computer test, I expect to use the computer method. Okay, and oh, by the way, can you guys come up with a command for the maximum?
Equals X.
Max. Okay. Could you come up with a command for the minimum? Equals min. Those also work. Okay, so whatever you prefer. If you're going to use the quartile command, I'm going to recommend that you press F4 when you're selecting your data, and then you will have fewer problems. Okay? It's a really easy thing to forget. That's why I wanted to show you the wrong method, because I know some of you are going to do it wrong on the test, and you've been warned, and it's on tape. It's on YouTube now. Okay? Question?
Can you do the right way again?
The right way. Okay, so from scratch. The right way equals quartile. Pick the bottom one. Highlight your data. Press F4 now, and it will do it for all of that.
What if it says you've entered too few arguments for this function?
Then you need to press a comma, and then you press a 0.
And you ignore all of those things.
Okay, you can choose here. You can put a 1, 2, 3, or 4 here. Okay, so what I would recommend is put the 0 in first, copy it down. Hopefully you get the same number 5 times in a row. If you get the same number 5 times in a row, you know you did it correct. If you did it wrong, remember it changes. Okay, and then you need to go in and edit each one, and I'm going to change this to a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. Okay, does that make sense? Was there another question? No? You're good? What'd you say?
It's not working.
It's not working because you're using the Mac. Why don't you just use these in here? I'm just going to give you a hard time the whole time, all right?
That's fine.
So, yeah, because you need to press comma. Versus so look here. Asking for 2.
That crosses over.
And then which quartile do you want? Yeah. 0 is your minimum value.
I need to.
Yes.
I'll press it like it.
Or you can do that too. Okay? Yes.
Oh, it's, I'm having problems too.
Okay. We're almost done with this. Can we go 5 more minutes and I'll do the
I actually have to leave.
Press F4 right now. Comma. There you go. Okay. Now I want to show you guys how to find outliers, and then I'll let you go. Okay. Now we left George's data there purposefully because we wanted to find outliers. Here's how you find outliers. How to find outliers. Find the fences. Okay. Your lower fence equals 1.5 times IQR. Actually, I wrote that wrong. It's Q1 minus 1.5 times your interquartile range. Okay? Your upper fence equals Q3 plus 1.5 times interquartile range. IQR stands for IQR equals interquartile range. Oh, by the way, I forgot to say, well, okay. I want to show you one more bad thing. So the interquartile range, IQR, equals Q3 minus Q1. Okay? So let's find my IQR in this case. IQR. So I'm just going to take my Q3 and I'm going to subtract my Q1. Okay, in this case, 19 minus 12 is 7. In this case, 19 minus 12.25 is 6.75. Okay? Now remember, you're going to get a different value here depending on which method you use, the by hand method or the computer method. Okay? And that's okay. Now let's find the fences. The lower fence equals this minus 1.5 times my interquartile range. Okay?
Can you define fence?
Yeah, I'm going to do that just in a second here. Okay? So then I'm going to do that for here as well. And the upper is Q3 plus 1.5 times my interquartile range. Okay? So essentially, to answer your question, what we're saying is, I'm going to make a rule that anybody who has a pulse rate of less than 1.5 in 15 seconds is an outlier. I would probably also say they were dead because their heart wasn't beating. Okay, does that make sense? And on the upper side, I'm going to say that anybody with a heart rate greater than 29.5 in 15 seconds is an outlier. Okay? So what outliers do we have? We've got one outlier. That was Jordan, which was 76. And it doesn't matter which method I use, he's an outlier in either case. Okay? So we're going to say here that Jordan is the Michael Jordan of heart rates, and he's an outlier. Okay? All right, now, you may wonder why I have this here, okay? So here's the deal. I want you to know how to draw these by hand as well as with the computer. I used to make you do this really complicated thing on the computer, and now Excel just does it for you really easily. And so here's what you do. Here's how you make a box and whisker. Highlight your data. Say Insert. Now, in this case, I think you can click on the spiderweb looking thing here. Oh, no, that didn't work. Sometimes it depends on which version of Excel you have. Sometimes you can click on that. If you do and it's not there, click on More Charts. And they now have, box and whisker. They also have histogram. By the way, I was going to tell you not to use this. Now you'll see why. Number one, if that was my histogram, what's wrong with it? It doesn't have at least 5 categories, number one. Number two, these categories kind of look like they overlap, don't they? 43 and 43. Okay? So don't use the histogram maker. I know it's there. Don't use it. Okay? But the other thing I want to show you is Insert, Recommended Charts. You can go to All Charts and Box and Whisker, and you will see here, chart title, Math 1040 class. Okay, click on the plus sign, add my axis titles. What should this axis title be? Heart beat in 15 seconds. I'm going to say class. Probably don't need that one there. I'd get rid of the one. You can just delete it. Okay?
Why did you delete that? The one.
Because it's useless. What does it mean? What does one mean? It means nothing. Okay? All right, now let me show you how I would draw this on the board, because I want to make sure if you can do, this is one that I do want you to know how to do on paper. Okay? So the idea here is, if I do this on paper, actually I'm going to want to see this here. All right. So you can either draw it horizontally or vertically. I don't care. If you're drawing this on paper, it might be easier to draw this way. So I'm going to have a scale here, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Okay? All right. Now, according to my thing here, my minimum is 12. I don't have any outliers, so I'm going to put a little dot right here on 12. Okay? My median is at 16.5, which is about right here. You're just going to have to eyeball it. Sorry, actually, that's interesting. This is a bad data set. I'm not going to draw this data set. Let me just I'm going to draw what a normal looking one is going to look like, okay? We're going to pretend this is what my data is, okay? Now the idea here, this is what we call a box and whisker diagram. Okay? This whisker here, that represents 25% of your data. This piece here also represents 25%. This box here also represents 25%, and this represents the last 25%. Does that make sense? Now, when we were finding the outliers, you were probably wondering where the 1.5 came from, right? The interquartile range represents what percent of my data? Half your data, 50%, right? Okay? So the idea here is, how much should be beyond the interquartile range? What percent of data should be beyond that? 25%, okay? Well, what if I doubled that and I said, well, I'm gonna go 50% out, okay? So this would be where a fence would be, let's say. And if I find data beyond the fence, I'm gonna put a star there, and that's gonna be how I will refer to as my outlier. Okay, so if you go 50% beyond here and you find data there, that we're going to call that an outlier. And so that's where the 1.5 comes from, because you've got 100% here. If I go 150% and you still have data outside of that, that's your outlier. Okay, so the idea here is, when you're drawing your box and whisker, okay, this point is either going to be the maximum or the fence. This is also going to be the minimum or the fence. Okay? So in our case, our case is kind of weird because our minimum and our first quartile are the exact same thing. If I were drawing this again, okay, my minimum was 12 and my first quartile was also 12. Okay? My median was at 16 and a half. My third quartile was at 19, about right here. So I've got my box here. My fence in this case is at 29 and a half. So that's going to be my fence. Okay. If I were drawing this by hand, it's going to look different than the computer. And then way out here, I've got Jordan as my outlier. So that's how I would draw that by hand. Okay. All right, did I cover all of chapter 2? I think I did. Oh, I didn't do variance. Okay, so as far as the homework goes, chapter 1 should be completed. Chapter 2, almost all completed. The only thing I didn't do was standard deviation. We will save that for Monday. So I'll just have you say whether you did chapter 1 tonight, but the quiz on Monday is going to be the rest of chapter 2. Excuse me. It's going to be on chapter 2, probably the rest of chapter 1, chapter 2 on Monday. When you see stuff that represents standard deviation, you can ignore that. So I will see you all on Monday. Have a great weekend. Yes. What's that? What about the math? Oh, you have a question here? I'm gonna stop the recording and I'll do your thing.